Hi, everybody. Welcome to Whitaker Auditorium, to Taylor University, and to Soul Signatures, recent work by TJ Walsh. I'm glad you're here. So students, please remember to sign in the hallway if you haven't already. Also, if you're here for Art and Life, some of you are here for Art and Life, right? And there might not be a spot for you to sign. Just sign on the blank sheet. There's some blank sheets out there. Sign on those for Professor Maswaka, okay? So special thanks to Professors Herman and Bao, also Mantha Brownson and Ellie Camphausen, who helped to install this exhibition. Thanks to Beth Kaler, she does most everything, and also Katie Bernard designed the posters and the vinyl. Yeah, all right, thank you. But I'd say maybe most of all, thanks to Professor Hannah Richardson, who made sure that I first heard about TJ and his work and the idea of bringing him here to Taylor. So thank you, Professor Richardson. So many of you have had an opportunity to loiter around Metcalf Gallery this week and to get to know TJ's work a little bit. If you weren't able to, and some of you were able to spend time with him even today. So in putting words together for this introduction, I realized I wasn't going to say it as well as TJ, so I'm just going to read a little bit of his artist statement, if you don't mind, okay? And he speaks about the emotional residue of working as a therapist and how it's transfigured into a painting. So here's the quote. In therapy, the container offers a safe space for emotions to be explored, felt, and processed. My canvases function similarly. Quick, aggressive marks reflect frustration, soft, deliberate strokes suggest calm, and layered patches of color arise from introspection. These gestures transform lingering emotions into tangible, visible forms. While the finished work may signify a chapter in this process, the act of creation itself is the center of my practice. My paintings are a space where movement, decision-making, and the inherent messiness of emotional expression finds a home. Do I need to repeat that last one? Okay, listen to this. Okay. My paintings are a space where movement, decision-making, and the inherent messiness of emotional expression finds a home. End quote. Something that struck me right away was, while I do see some somber moments in the work, the work is largely hopeful. And I think that therapists do really hard work. And they hear tough stories of pain and despair, but also of hope and joy. And I'm so grateful for therapists and how they positively affect the mental health of the loved ones around us. I think that TJ's titles give sort of elbow room for examination with a delightful amount of direction, but not too forceful. Take a look at those tonight, okay? And the colors and the mark making are beautiful and full of meaning, and I can imagine that TJ's clients feel seen by him. Among other things, TJ Walsh is an internationally exhibited artist, a licensed professional counselor, certified clinical trauma professional, and brand strategist based in Philadelphia. He writes and speaks on the topics of art, culture, faith, and mental health, and his work is exhibited and published internationally. He received his BFA in graphic design from the University of the Arts, Philadelphia, and his MA in clinical counseling psychology from Eastern University. Prior to his work in mental health and higher education administration, he was a creative director, art director, and director of communications for several national and international nonprofit organizations in New York City and Philadelphia. TJ believes every human being is inherently creative, particularly when they access their authentic selves, and is passionate about helping people understand who they are and what their vision, mission, and purpose is as a creative. He currently lives in Philly with his wife and 2 sons, a dog and a cat, 65 houseplants and counting, and a robust and growing collection of artwork from emerging artists. So please welcome with me, TJ Walsh.
All right, let's see. Will it come back? Yeah. Hey, everybody. I'm TJ, and I'm really excited to be here at Taylor. I've never been to your campus before, although I know many people who have gone to school here, so it's really nice to see kind of where they spent a bunch of their time. Thanks so much for welcoming me this morning and this afternoon. It's good to see some of you guys back, even though they threatened you with docking of points. I understand how that goes. But it's good to see everybody here. It's always really awkward for me to hear the bio read. And it's there because people ask me for it. But at the end of the day, I'm just a therapist and an artist and a person who loves human beings and who wants to see human beings thrive and live their best life. So all of that other stuff is really just not as important as that other stuff that I just said about loving people. Just a little caveat about me, I tend to either talk fast or quiet or I mumble. So if I'm fast or quiet or I'm mumbling like that, raise your hand and ask me to repeat stuff. I'm totally happy to do that. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about emotional alchemy, transforming therapeutic encounters into abstract paintings and drawings. Basically, all that means is that I take what is left with me after I'm working with clients and patients and bring them upstairs to my studio to get it off of me so that I can go be present with the next person. So, what is emotional alchemy? Emotional alchemy is the process of transforming difficult, heavy, or complex emotions, such as those things there, self-doubt, fear, imposter syndrome, creative blocks, which I don't believe in creative blocks. I should delete that, and I'll tell you why a little later, into something generative, valuable, and empowering. So it involves recognition and awareness, processing and integration, transformation, and creative expression. Goes into this idea of emotional alchemy. And it allows individuals to embrace discomfort as a part of the creative process, trusting their intuition and using their emotions as fuel for authenticity and impact. And that's what I do as a therapist in the clinical setting as well. I want people to trust their process, to trust their intuition, and to use all of that data that they're getting from their body, their heart, and their mind to live authentically and live for impact. So I was telling a class this afternoon, I guess, Jeremy, you asked a question about like my different roles and stuff as an artist, as a therapist, as a dad, as a partner. And I made a comment that I don't really see myself separated into roles. Everything I do is one thing. So therapy and art making are connected for me as a calling. So I live my life as I'm being called to do this work. And so bridging psychotherapy and art is really, really interconnected. So my work combines abstract, intuitive painting with reflective therapy practices, and emotional and psychological residue becomes visual narratives through abstraction. I talk about this, I use this phrase emotional residue, psychological or emotional residue all of the time with people when they ask me what it's like to be a therapist and to be sitting with people in some of their most difficult times and some of their most joyous times. I get to hear people, I'm like the only person out of 7 billion people on the face of the earth to hear a lot of the things that people bring to me. They don't tell anybody anything else except they'll tell it to me. But I see 30 clients a week. It's a lot of clients. It's a lot of listening, and it's a lot of holding space. And I'm left after those sessions with this emotional residue on me. It's kind of like this idea maybe of like an oil sheen or an oil slick that's just kind of covering me and weighing me down. It can be weighing me down with good stuff, it can be weighing me down with not so great stuff, but it's still with me, and then I have to go back and I have to be present for the next person, fully, completely, without distraction, without hesitation. And so I use my studio time, my studio practice over the years has become the way that I take that emotional residue and put it someplace else so that I can go back downstairs and be present with another person again. That person who's trusting me with their life oftentimes. And then, of course, historical context. I look at, abstract art's lineage and history and draw connections to it, and I'll show you some of that in a moment. So in therapy, psychotherapy in particular, especially the group of psychotherapists that I tend to hang out with, talk about, which is psychoanalytic, by the way, old school stuff. Talk about the therapeutic container. And the therapeutic container is really, really important because that is where safety, predictability, trust, reparenting, everything occurs within that container. And I don't do anything with my clients outside of that container because it makes things unknown, makes things maybe scary, unstructured. And so everything that we do together, everything I bring to them and they bring to me is within this container. For me, my studio practice becomes my therapeutic container where I can go and have that consistent, reliable place to take the stuff that I'm dealing with, the stuff that I'm hearing, and put it someplace else. And then close it up. That's the other thing about a container. Containers usually have lids, right? So when we are done, we can put a lid on it, and then we can go back out into the world. And so my artistic process, my painting practice, is a container in the sense that I can deposit all of the things that I need to leave there, put a lid on it, and then go back into the world. Same thing with my therapy practice. Okay, so let's see, you can read those words. My art practice steps into a realm of emotional revelation, that sounds fancy, where abstract brushstrokes and intuitive reflections pave the way for a transformative journey of self-discovery. So just like I'm trying to guide people in therapy to a place of self-discovery, self-knowing, understanding themselves, others, the world around them, God, even oftentimes, that's what I'm trying to do for myself in the therapy or the painting space. Just as the therapy room and that container creates a place for emotional exploration, mirroring, relationships, etc., right? So does my painting process. So you'll see in my work a lot of sweeping brushstrokes, either big, small, little, but always moving, layered paint. Sometimes the paintings, I don't think so much here, maybe on the little paper ones, they become kind of like opaque and hard to get through. That's because there's a lot of layering going on. Every time I go back to it, I'm just adding to it. And I'm not necessarily thinking about the end product, I'm thinking about the process. The process is important. I don't really care about the content. And that's true in therapy, and it's true in my painting work. And then you'll see erased surfaces or worked over surfaces where you see hesitation of thought or a clearing up, a clarity of thought happening. That's all going on these surfaces, and it's really what I do in therapy with folks. All right, so now we get to talk about some of my favorite artists, where I draw a lot of inspiration from, and I'll show you how it kind of links to my work in a second. Before I do that, are there any questions, thoughts, comments, considerations? Yeah.
How would you differentiate the therapeutic container with compartmentalism, or how would you differentiate those two things?
The question is, how do I differentiate the therapeutic container with compartmentalization? That's a good question. So the therapeutic container is just a space, a place, a room where we come and we meet, and everything is open and on the table there. It's to create safety, it's to create a sense of expectation that you can go there and you can process, you can talk, you can think through all of your stuff. And then you can close it up and leave it behind for next time. It's in a sense kind of like compartmentalization in that sense where you're closing it up, you're trying to put it away, but we're not trying to hide it and we're not trying to kind of like ignore it, right? But there's a time and a place to bring it out and look at it. If I don't do a good job helping somebody close up that container, there's the possibility of them going back out into the world and having a difficult time functioning, depending on what they're dealing with, right? So we take it, we look at it, and then we close it up. Okay. All right. Art history. So, I deleted a slide that explained what I was going to do. Oh well. Okay, so I look at abstraction for like across the abstract expressionistic timeline. So starting with people like Kandinsky and then Rothko and Mitchell. Kandinsky pioneered the idea of art as spiritual and emotional practice in his work. Mark Rothko created large immersive color fields designed to evoke profound emotional responses. Joan Mitchell, known for dynamic gestural abstraction that channels raw emotion and personal memory. These people speak to me, their work speaks to me like really nothing else. And Mark Rothko especially, in one of the closest encounters with God that I ever had was in Houston at the Menil Collection, where on that campus they have the Rothko Chapel. The Rothko Chapel is kind of like a church-like structure where inside of it there's, I forget how many, 6, 10, 12, something like that, of Rothko's color field paintings, and then just benches, right, for you to sit and contemplate the paintings, think about your life, do all these things. And Rothko was not a Christian guy. I think his family's Jewish, I believe, but he himself, I don't believe, had any certain faith. However, God really met me in that chapel with those calming paintings. But I was able to have a conversation with God and those paintings, or through those paintings. So Rothko is really important to me. And then Joan Mitchell, I love Joan Mitchell. She was practicing mid-century, mid-1900s, 1950s, 60s. And you see one of her city landscapes there. Then we got Helen Frankenthaler is another person that I'm really guided by in terms of making. She came up with this idea or started using soak stain technique with a diluting paint, and pouring that on unprimed canvas. So canvas, oftentimes we prime that canvas so that it creates a more, a surface that doesn't suck in the paint as much, right? And we have something to work on there. She used unprimed canvas. And so when you put pigment on unprimed canvas, the material sucks it up, right? And it's like dyeing fabric. And so her canvases typically create fluid emotive compositions. Cy Twombly is another awesome person, and I get mad pretty much every day because I'm stuck in some kind of Facebook algorithm that keeps showing me people who hate Cy Twombly, and it just riles me up every day because they talk about, oh, I can do that, right? But Cy Twombly's work is actually really, really intricate and at least to me, profound, and he explores emotional and allegorical themes of sometimes love, loss, mythology. Ava Hess, another person that I look to, likes to look at the impermanence, often reflecting on her own personal struggles. So I like that these people are bringing their personal stuff to their work and not just, and really working through these ideas of what it is to be a human, right? In abstract ways. So there's their work there. Frankenthaler, that's a canvas with the poured staining paint. Cy Twombly. And yeah, that's just awesome. And then Ava Hess as a sculptural installation there. Tracy Emin, another person that I really enjoy. She talks about, through her work, confessions, so confessing things about her personal pain and resilience. Over the recent years, she has struggled with a lot of personal loss in relationships and also her health. And so her more recent work is really about that. But she's been working for a while. Then, of course, we have Jackson Pollock. For him, it's the act of painting, right? The act of painting becoming a direct expression of his inner world, right? And again, these paintings look like pretty rudimentary, pretty simple. It's drip painting, it's throwing paint. But really, it's about the act of painting itself, the act of doing, the act of making. Agnes Martin, Quiet Introspection. Okay, so that's an installation from Tracy Emin. She also does painting and drawing. Jackson Pollock, it's a really famous one from him. Autumn Rhythm, number 30 from 1950. When we think of Jackson Pollock, oftentimes people are thinking about this one painting from him. And then on the direct opposite side of Crazy World, from Jackson Pollock, we have Agnes Martin, who is just very structured, but brings a very calming sense to things. Anselm Kiefer addresses historical trauma and personal memory. Louise Bourgeois, I love her sculptures. You'll see the spider sculpture in a second. And Zhao Wu Qi, if I can pronounce it correctly, which I'm probably not, is all about lyrical compositions. Okay, so there we go. Kiefer, Bourgeois, and Wu Qi. Love the lyrical composition that is there on the right-hand side painting. Okay, so connections to my work. So again, Kandinsky, art as a vehicle for emotional and spiritual exploration. So the use of color and line and form communicate nonverbal emotional experiences, aligning with my intention to create works that hold and transform complex emotional states. So that's where I see my connection to Kandinsky there, trying to hold and transform complex emotional states, bringing the seen and the unseen. Y'all, this sounds like really, like when I give these kinds of talks, I'm like, what am I talking about? Like, it's just, they're paintings and they're really personal to me, and I hope that they would become personal to other people who look at them. And when I'm sitting here like talking about like connections to history and stuff, that's important, I guess. But sometimes I'm like talking in my head, I'm like, let's go have like cookies or something. All right. But we can't. So this is one of the paintings that is in the gallery upstairs or downstairs. I don't know where I am. It's called "What You Thought Was What You Thought Was the End Was Just a Bend." So again, so when you see my work coming up, it's in relation to the artist that I was talking about and the connection there. Rothko, again, evoking introspection through existential emotion. So focus on creating immersive emotional landscapes parallels my goal of fostering introspection and connection in viewers. So if anybody later asks me what this painting is about, I'm going to do a therapist thing, and I'm going to say, well, what does it mean for you? What is it about for you? Because I want you to project your own emotional narratives onto the work, right? After I'm making and being all crazy in my studio and moving around and throwing stuff at the canvas and all that kind of thing, like I'm done with it. Right now I want you to engage with it and have a conversation with the painting. So in works like the painting from Rothko, no, you didn't see that one, but it's a color field painting. He used simplicity to elicit profound, often spiritual responses, and that's a quality that I strive to embed in my own use of layered colors and tonal shifts and things like that. So this is a detail of one of the paintings that is upstairs, Confetti Aftermath. I like it. I often like, and I said that because I often like my details better than my whole paintings, which is why I do that. And then I try to pass them off as actual full paintings. It's the Instagrammation of everything. Again, that's another detail of Confetti Aftermath. Okay, so Mitchell and Frankenthaler, layering and spontaneous mark making. So I'm all about just intuitive painting, just driving at it, pushing it spontaneously with mark making, brush strokes, smearing things, spraying things. Yeah. So dynamic gestures where every mark vibrates with energy have deeply influenced my use of expressive movement on the canvas. So I try to capture the essence of fleeting emotions, whatever those emotions are, in physical marks. So on the left, there is Hemlock by Mitchell, and that inspires my belief in the tension between chaos and control. Frankenthaler, as we talked about, she uses a lot of organic techniques that resonate with my process of allowing paint to flow, pool, settle organically, and spontaneously. This is a little one. This is a detail of a piece on paper. This is actually in the book that I've been carrying around for some reason all day. So we'll see if it's there maybe. Then we get to Twombly, calligraphic marks and gestural layering, right? So he inspires my exploration of layered meanings and hidden narratives. He wants you to see like a particular narrative, like he's typically working with some, mythological story or something like that, where I'm not really wanting to tell you a narrative, but I want you to make up your own narrative based on your experience. Then Tracy, her honesty about vulnerability and trauma that informs my willingness to translate therapeutic experiences into visual language. Everybody wants to know, are the paintings a particular client of mine? And if so, please tell me their story. And I say no. So the paintings are not a particular client. The paintings are more my process of getting that, again, residue off of myself. I take very, very seriously, like I said, people tell me things that they don't and will never tell anybody else. And it's super important that I honor that. And so I don't make paintings that are of my clients, even if they were to be abstracted. Okay, it's a work in progress situation. Another detail of that one. Gospel according to uncertainty, detail. So these artists' approaches emphasize the power of abstraction to hold and transform emotional content, creating a space where memory, feeling, and identity converge. So creating spaces for us to explore ourselves, explore the world around us, really super, super important, and we don't do it enough today because we're all obsessed with not paying attention to anything. And my work continues this dialogue by merging immediacy of therapeutic practice with the timeless language of abstraction. Ooh, I like that word. Exploring the emotional resonance of marks, color, and layer. So immediacy, creating space for things to be revealed. How long have I been talking? Okay. Okay. So, capturing moments, the role of intuition and immediacy. So I talk about myself as an intuitive painter, and I focus a lot on immediacy. I told some of you today that I make primarily just 2 decisions until I realized while I was talking I make a lot more decisions as I'm going, but for the purposes of what I'm trying to convince you of tonight, I make 2 decisions only. One of those decisions is what color am I just going to lay down on a surface, and then the second decision is what kind of mark am I going to start with. And then from there, it's all intuition, it's communication with the painting, it's the painting communicating with me. I'm a weird person, I believe paintings, I mean, not really, but I do believe paintings are living things and they're talking to me and I'm talking to them. And they're telling me what they want to do. So intuitive gestures are a direct and unfiltered means of emotional expression where instinctive movement and mark making become the language of immediacy. So again, Joan Mitchell, it aligns with her, who described her paintings as, her painting process rather, as an emotional response, letting intuition drive the dynamic energy of her marks. We saw that a few slides ago with Hemlock. Twombly's gestural works also reflect this approach where subconscious mind and the physical act of creating intertwine to capture raw emotional energy. So I want the painting process for me to be the processing of the raw emotional energy. I don't want the emotions to be processed before they go onto the canvas or whatever I'm using. And it's influenced by surrealist automatism, which is a technique that embraces spontaneity to bypass conscious control, resulting in work that reflects fleeting emotional and psychological states. So for me, I interpret that to mean like leaving, your cognitive brain for a little while and feeling into your body and just letting that go to reflect the emotional information that your body's giving you or giving me. Intuitive gestures, process over perfection. That's really important. I think we get focused on the content of things. I've said that a few times probably now, instead of like how we get from point A to point B. That is like so much more, in my mind, the purpose of life is to go through the process, understand the process, experience the process instead of being so focused on the final outcome. This is Twombly. I'm really lucky in Philadelphia. We have the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and I tell my family that, surprise, it's time to go to the PMA today. And then they just know that what that means is that we're going to go sit inside Twombly's permanent gallery for 30 to 45 minutes. Of course, my boys want to go see like the medieval armor and all of that jazz, and I'm like, not interested, dude. We're gonna do this instead. Capturing moments. The role of intuition and immediacy. Immediate over the deliberate. Mirroring complexity of human emotion. So the resulting works reflect the tension between instinct and intention, mirroring the complexity of human emotion. The physicality of the process. So my work is on a wall, and I stand painting on the wall, and I'm moving around, I'm moving works, I'm putting them up, putting them down, putting them down, just moving around. So the physicality is really, really important to me, and it becomes a key element in my work. So there's the emotional alchemy idea again. Artistic creation serves as an act of that emotional alchemy where abstract feelings such as grief, joy, or frustration are translated into tangible visual expressions. So a lot of people don't like to feel feelings. They don't like to believe in feelings. They think it's a bad thing to have feelings. I'm from an Irish American family, and that is the belief and sentiment that I grew up with, except I'm a very emotional person like we all are. Emotions are pieces of information. They aren't like permanent fact, right? But it's really helpful if we get used to understanding why that information is coming up for us from one moment to the next so that we can understand what the heck is going on, right? Otherwise, we're just left confused and consumed. So it's important to move from that emotional or feeling impulse to then understanding what do we do with it. And the way I've learned to deal with it is through painting. So in one of my therapy worlds, we talk about making the implicit explicit. So the things that are implied really need to become, out there and seen and known and to be understood. We can imply things, but until we make them real, they really don't mean anything. So externalizing internal experiences to make sense of them. So Jung's concept of active imagination, where symbolic imagery bridges the conscious and unconscious. And my process reflects this by gesture, texture, and color as tools to convert emotional residue into layered compositions, creating a physical manifestation of transformation. Expressing emotions as a pathway to healing and understanding. So parallel to therapeutic processes, creating a safe space for emotions to emerge, be processed, and eventually transformed. That is my art process as well. In therapy, the act of articulating emotions is healing. So articulating emotions to somebody who's hearing you, who's sitting with you, is healing. We don't really have to do too much else. Therapy is not that magical. It's two people coming together and one person being seen and the other person understanding. Similarly, in art, the physicality of mark making, layering, and revising becomes a cathartic process. Okay. We can use art to document, we can use art and therapy to document personal narratives of trauma and healing, turning pain into empowerment. And in my own practice, like I said earlier, each canvas becomes its own container where emotions are held and revisited and reshaped until they find a resolution through the visual language of abstraction, or I get bored with it and move on. This is Emmons' piece, another installation. Emotional art invites viewers to connect with their own feelings, creating a shared experience that bridges the personal and the universal. The layered ambiguity in works by artists like Rothko, Martin, encourages introspection, allowing each viewer to bring their own emotional lens to the work. My paintings are designed to hold space for this intersection. Art engages viewers in a reciprocal dialogue. So, like I was saying, paintings are living things. They respond to the environment around them, and they have different things to say to you in each environment that they get to live in with you and wherever you encounter them. So upstairs, the paintings are communicating certain things, I noticed, and some of you noticed this afternoon. But when they're at home with me in Philadelphia, which is a very, very different environment than here, they have a different story to tell. And I think that is because when I'm here in Indiana, where I've never been before, I feel very different than I am in Philadelphia, where I live all of the time. The energy is different, and so I'm having a different kind of conversation with those paintings. I had an idea there, but we're not going to do that. References are here. And how you can find me on the internet is there. And now I would love to hear questions, comments, concerns, whatever, from you guys. Yeah?
I'm curious how you title your work and if there's anything like typical about that process for you.
Yeah. So I titled these works this week when Jeremy asked me whether or not I was going to have titles. I typically don't like to title my work very much. When I do, it's typically like pieces of like lyrics or prose or poetry that I take from people and appropriate into like different phrases and stuff, and then it's typically stuff I was reading or listening to or something like that while I was working or like in the area of working, and then I say, which painting does this one look like it goes with? And then the painting says yes or no, and then it goes with it, and then it looks fancy. But there's really the thing is, if I could have left them untitled, that would be my preference, and I could have. But because I want the viewer to come up with their own thing, and I don't like guiding people to things. Yeah.
I already touched on this a little bit, but why did you choose abstract art over other art forms?
It's more immediate. It feels like me. It is the way I live my life, like a giant like knot of stuff in my head that just needs to be spilled out. I was telling another group of folks today that my undergrad degree is from the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. It's no longer there because of a disaster. But if you really care about financial management and how it's supposed to be done well, let me tell you the story of UArts. Anyway, what was I saying? Graphic design. I was a graphic design major at UArts. UArts comes out of the Swiss Basel School of Design. It's very, very grid-based and rigid and very, very tedious. And so I learned how to really play by the rules a lot, while also teaching my professors to lighten up a little bit. And we all survived, and I got a degree, but I learned that I really wanted to be more free with my stuff. And that's including like when I was learning how to draw. I learned how to draw things that looked like things and all of that. And I said another offensive thing to the group earlier today, that like drawing really well and like good pictures and stuff, being a good renderer, that's what a camera is for now. And so I know that is offensive to a lot of people, and I really do respect a lot of people who can like render really well. But I'm more interested in the process, in the movement, in the painting, and the emotion.
That's great, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed it's really hard for art therapists to keep up their own personal artistic practice. So why do you think that often happens to art therapists? And then in your life practically, what does it look like to guard that time for you?
So I think therapists in general are really bad at taking care of themselves. And that includes like not paying attention to their artistic practice if they're makers, or their athletic or sports practice if they're athletic or sports people, or like even just tending to family and health and all of that kind of thing, because we pour so much into other people that we often forget that we're a thing that needs watering too and care. Also, no, won't launch into that diatribe. Mental health, the mental health field doesn't do a good job at taking care of their people, and gives them work schedules that don't allow for much personal care. So then for me, I'm a hobbit and I live in my house. I see patients in the basement, either on a screen or they come to my private office at home. And then my family's living in the middle of the house, and then my studio is upstairs. And so I got rid of an external studio space, primarily for the reason that I wanted to be able to afford a house, so I had to stop paying for a studio space. But also, it was really convenient to be able to have everything there. So like when I am finished with a client, do my note, and then I run upstairs and maybe paint for a minute, and then come back down. And that's why painting tends to be 5 to 10 minutes at a time, because my life is dictated by 45-minute increments. So every 45 minutes I have to go to the bathroom, and I have to drink water, and I have to paint something, and then I have to go back, and then 45 minutes later. That's just how my day is all the time. So I forced it, I make it happen. Yep.
You talked a lot about emotional residue, and that being how you create art. Would you credit your pieces of art to your clients' emotions or to your empathetic emotions, to their stories?
Yeah, good question. Both. No, both. I mean, the answer is definitely both, but primarily it's about my response. So in therapy world, there's the concepts of transference and countertransference, right? Transference is what the client starts to project onto the therapist object. So all of a sudden I become somebody's mom and they want to throw stuff at me and they yell at me and they do all these kinds of things. That's because I'm doing my job in reparenting them. Countertransference is when the therapist stuff becomes activated, and we have to do all kinds of things to try and understand what's happening so that we can continue to help our clients. That's part of what I'm doing in the paintings, is working through that countertransferential content that comes up for me. It's not all it is, but that's like a big part of it. So then once I work that kind of stuff out and I understand a little bit more of what's going on, or things are a little more processed, next time I see the client, I'll be able to enter in a little bit differently, and then maybe use that countertransference to, in like a therapeutic way. I don't know, does that answer your question at all?
Yeah.
Do you ever do this kind of art making with your own clients, like help them engage with their emotions with art making?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so just like an asterisk before I answer the question, I'm not a board certified art therapist, okay? So I'm a licensed professional counselor. That's just the license I got. And I'm a psychotherapist. But yeah, to answer your question, yes, I will employ creative modalities with my clients all of the time. I'm just not employing what would be like art therapy specific interventions, right? So we're using creative modalities or creative interventions to try and access some of the stuff that they're going to do with me in talk therapy. I'm not going to try and decipher their artwork necessarily and all of that kind of stuff, yeah. But yeah.
I'm curious, when you look back on your art, are you able to identify the situation and the emotions with that, even if it's like years before? Does it come back to you? What you were feeling when you painted those things, or what event was associated with it?
Probably not, no.
Okay.
Like I sometimes I remember what it was, but it's generally like I'm coming to it each time with like, you know, I'm in a new state of mind, so I'm just looking at the painting and trying to just looking at it and understanding what it has for me today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, like process over content, right? So it's like in the moment, it was really important to me when I was making it, but then it's done and it hangs there and it does whatever it does for whoever sees it. So I tend to just move on and forget what it was about at the moment.
Thank you.
Hi.
How do you introduce the art making process to clients who are uncomfortable with art making?
How do I introduce the art making process to clients who are uncomfortable with art making? In general, I don't want to push anybody to do anything that they're uncomfortable with. So I'll introduce it to them and they can push back and then we'll kind of like move away from it. But if they're interested but uncomfortable, we just really start slowly. I might do like a guided visualization. I might, to kind of get people grounded in the space, and then ask them to respond to whatever was coming up for them in the moment, just by using lines or shapes or colors or anything like that, putting very little like emphasis on like outcome. So hey, we're stuck here. You know what helps me when I'm stuck is when I try and understand my body and what's happening in my body. So would you like to do a guided visualization with me and see what comes up, and then we can respond to that through a creative intervention. Sometimes I draw with them, doing the same thing. So partnering as well. But yeah, really slowly. And gently. Yeah.
At the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned not believing in creative blocks.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm a very like anxious, tedious person who likes to focus on like being really productive and being really, you know, just like, I need to be doing something, I need to be doing something, why isn't something coming out? And then I realized that it's okay not to be producing all of the time. It's actually really important that we're not producing all of the time. And when people typically come to me saying that they're in a creative block, it's because they're just like feeling like they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing and putting stuff out every day. And so I've started to, and somebody told me about a book called Wintering today that I have to check out. So other people obviously have thought about this stuff too, that like the creative process is like the course of seasons, right? And when people start complaining to me about being blocked creatively, I'm like, oh, so you're in winter time, right? You're in the winter where we power down and we start to like absorb all of this energy and take different nutrients in, and it looks like we're not doing very much. In fact, we might like look dead, but we're actually very much alive, right? And then the spring, what comes after winter? Then like spring comes, and then like summer, and then like fall, right? And so each season has a different purpose to the creative process. And so when we're blocked, so I like to work people to shift their mindset to being like, oh, like this is me in wintertime where I'm supposed to be looking around and considering things and feeding myself and my creative energy. And then when spring happens, that's when these new ideas will start to emerge and then go from there. Because if we can't shift our mind to something that's more like, you know, transformational or growth oriented, we're going to be stuck in this spot where, you know, we are feeling defeated and hopeless and helpless about creating our work. So that was helpful for me, and it seems to be helpful for a lot of my folks. Ooh, anyone else? Okay, cool, all done.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, TJ. Appreciate it. So we're going to head upstairs now. You can visit with the artist in the gallery. Hopefully there's some cookies left, if not too many people pass through the hallway. I don't know. Let's go find out. All right, we'll see you upstairs.